My brother likes to call it a phase. He says I'm the type who mistakes quiet for depth, who stares too long at people and then thinks it means something. Maybe he's right. Or maybe he's just never noticed the way someone can fold their napkin like they're holding back the weight of the day. It started at the cafe on the corner of my street. Nothing cinematic about it, just the kind of place with chipped mugs, a clock that's always 5 minutes slow, and the faint smell of burnt toast no matter what time you walk in. I'd been coming there since I moved into the city, mostly to study, sometimes just to avoid the silence of my own apartment. She was already sitting there when I noticed her. A woman in her 40s, early, mid, I couldn't tell, reading a paperback with one hand wrapped around a thermos she'd brought from home. Not many people do that. Everyone else just settles for whatever the cafe serves. That detail stayed with me longer than I meant it to. The first time we spoke, it wasn't much of a conversation. She caught me glancing at her book's cover and tilted it just enough for me to read the title. Not as good as the first one, she said, not looking up. Her voice had that low, rested quality, like she didn't need to rush a single word. I smiled, awkward, and tapped my pen against my notebook. Haven't read the first one either. Then don't start here, she said, a faint curve of her mouth before she went back to her page. That should have been the end of it. Just a passing moment between strangers. But the next time I came in, she was there again. Same table, same thermos. The barista knew my order by then, black coffee, 1 sugar, and when he set it down, she glanced at me like she remembered. You always drink it that bitter? She asked. I shrugged. Easier that way. Nothing to forget. Her eyes held mine for a second too long, like she was weighing whether to ask what I meant. Instead, she just smoothed the page of her book with her thumb and said, Fair enough. After that, it became, not routine, but something close. I'd find myself looking for her when I walked in. Sometimes she'd nod in recognition, other times she'd just keep reading until I sat down, and only then offer a quiet, Long day? No pressure, no expectations. Just a question hanging between us like steam over a cup. I didn't tell my brother about her, not yet. He'd laugh, say I was inventing a story in my head. But she wasn't a story. She was someone who noticed when I left a page half-filled in my notebook, who asked why I never finished my toast, who once lent me her pen when mine ran dry and then didn't ask for it back. Small things, the kind you don't explain to anyone without sounding foolish. One evening, as the cafe was closing, I caught myself folding and unfolding the napkin on my table while she packed her book away. She hesitated, standing by the door, then looked back. You're here most nights, she said. It wasn't a question. Guess I like the quiet, I answered. Her gaze lingered, thoughtful, before she gave a small nod and stepped out into the night air. I thought that was it. But when I gathered my things, I saw something under my cup, a folded scrap of receipt paper. Her handwriting was quick, slanted. Next time, you don't have to sit alone. And just like that, my brother's warning echoed in my head. She'll break your heart. But all I could think was, at least I'd have the chance to let her try. I didn't see her for 3 days after that note. I told myself it didn't matter. People leave scraps of kindness all the time, a barista remembering your order, a stranger holding the door. But I kept checking the corner table every time I walked in, the one where her thermos usually sat. Empty. On the 4th day, she was there. And when our eyes met, she gave me that small nod again, like nothing had shifted. Still, my pulse stumbled a little. I carried my coffee over, hesitated, then sat across from her. She closed her book without marking the page. Didn't think you'd take me up on it, she said. Didn't think I was invited, I answered. That earned me a quiet laugh, the kind that made me want to keep talking even if I had nothing useful to say. Instead, I fiddled with the sleeve of my cup until she spoke again. Long time ago, I used to come here with my ex-husband. He liked the corner table too. She said it casually, like she was mentioning the weather. Funny how habits outlive people. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded, letting the silence stretch. She tapped her fingers against her thermos, a rhythm soft enough I almost missed it. "You're younger than I thought," she said finally. I met her gaze. "Too young?" Her mouth curved, not quite a smile. "Old enough to know what that question means." The air thickened between us. I wanted to tell her it wasn't like that I wasn't chasing some cliché, that I didn't even know what I was chasing. Instead, I pictured my brother shaking his head, saying she would break me without even trying. We changed the subject. She asked about my classes, and I stumbled through an explanation about late-night essays and professors who thought deadlines were holy scripture. She told me she worked from home now, writing reports no one read but everyone demanded. The ordinary details, exchanged like coins, felt heavier than they should have. At one point, she reached for my cup to move it closer when it wobbled near the edge of the table. Her fingers brushed mine. A second too long, maybe. Or maybe I imagined that pause. Afterward, I couldn't focus on anything she said. My mind looped on the warmth of her skin, the casual way she didn't pull back immediately. When the cafe lights flickered, signaling closing time, we stood together. Neither of us moved toward the door. She adjusted the strap of her bag, then glanced at me with a look I couldn't quite read. "Next time," she said, "bring tea. You look like someone who could use it." I almost laughed, at myself, at her, at the strange weight of such a small request. But I just nodded. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. It was easier for a while. Sitting across from her, sharing the quiet like it belonged to us. But then something shifted. One evening I walked in and saw her already at the corner table. She looked up, smiled faintly, but the seat across from her was taken. A man around her age, leaning in as if they were old friends. I froze mid-step, heat rising in my face before I could stop it. She noticed. Her eyes flicked to me, then back to him. Subtle, but enough. I turned toward the counter, ordered coffee I didn't even want, and sat near the window instead. From there, I could hear fragments of their voices. His laugh too loud. Her replies softer, measured. I told myself it was nothing. People have lives. Histories. I was a stranger orbiting at the edges. Still, I didn't open my notebook. Just stared at the page until the words blurred. When I finally looked up again, the man was gone. She was watching me. No book, no thermos. Just her eyes steady across the room. For a second, I almost moved toward her. But something in her expression, regret? Caution? Held me in place. The next time I came, she was alone again. I hesitated before sliding into the seat across from her. "You were busy last time," I said, trying for casual, failing. Her fingers tightened around the thermos. "An old coworker. He talks too much." I wanted to believe that was all. I wanted to ask if he meant more than that, but the words felt childish in my throat. Instead, I just nodded, tracing a circle on the tabletop with my fingertip. She studied me for a moment. Then leaned back, exhaling. "You're what, 22? 21. That small correction seemed to hang in the air between us. Too young. Too much space between who we were. She didn't say it out loud, but I saw it in the way her gaze dropped to the table, and how her hand hovered over her book without opening it. I laughed, short and nervous. "That bad?" Her eyes lifted, softer now. "No. Just, it's complicated." We sat there in the kind of silence that's louder than noise. Every shift of her hand, every glance toward the door, felt amplified. I imagined her telling me to stop coming, imagined myself walking away, imagined both futures at once until I couldn't breathe. When the barista wiped down the counter and dimmed the lights, I gathered my things. She did the same. At the door, we almost collided. Her hand brushed my arm as she stepped aside. Too light to be an accident. I froze. She did too. For a breath, we stood like that, inches apart. Her eyes flicked to my mouth, then back up so fast I almost doubted it happened. My heart hammered, waiting, bracing. But she only whispered, "Good night." and slipped into the cool air, leaving me with the echo of everything we almost said. It happened on a Tuesday. Nothing remarkable about it. Rain in the morning, streets still damp by evening. I'd stopped at the cafe, but she wasn't there. I lingered anyway, long enough for the barista to raise an eyebrow before I left with coffee I didn't touch. Walking back, I saw her on the bench outside our building. She had her thermos balanced on her knee, staring at nothing in particular. The sight stopped me cold. Out of place, like she'd been waiting, though I knew better. She looked up as I approached. "Long day?" I shrugged, sat at the other end of the bench. The space between us felt deliberate, heavy. For a while neither of us spoke. Just the sound of traffic in the distance, the occasional drip from the tree above us. I took a sip of the lukewarm coffee, grimaced. She noticed. "You never finish it," she said softly. "Always order, never finish." "Habit," I muttered. Then, after a pause, "Guess I don't know what I like yet." Her eyes lingered on me at that, and something flickered there. Pity? Curiosity? I couldn't tell. I set the cup down at my feet, restless. "You looked busy the other day," I blurted, more sharply than I meant. She didn't answer at first. Just capped her thermos, turned it in her hands. "You mean when he was here?" I nodded. Regretted it instantly. "He's just someone who knew me before. People from the past have a way of showing up when you least want them." I wanted to ask, "And what about now?" But the words stayed locked in my throat. My fingers dug into the edge of the bench instead. She must have noticed, because her voice dropped. "You shouldn't get tangled in this." "In me." The quiet between us felt sharp, almost unbearable. Finally I said, "I don't care." It came out hoarse, stripped of everything I usually hide behind. Her breath caught, so faint I almost missed it. She looked away, toward the streetlights flickering on. "You don't mean that," she whispered. "I do." My hands were trembling, so I pressed them against my knees to hide it. I don't know what this is, but I can't stop thinking about you." The admission hung there, too raw to take back. She closed her eyes, leaned back against the bench. For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the city around us. When she finally opened her eyes, they looked tired, unguarded. "You don't understand what it costs." "Then explain it to me." She turned toward me, closer now, close enough that I could see the faint lines at the corner of her mouth, the way her lashes trembled. Her hand lifted, hesitated in the space between us. A pause so long it felt like a lifetime lived in half a breath. And then she whispered, "Do you really know what you're asking for?" The question stayed there, unanswered, like a door half open. The morning after that night on the bench, I half expected to see her again. Maybe outside, maybe at the cafe. But she wasn't there. Not the next day either. Or the day after. At first, I told myself she was busy. People have lives, routines that don't orbit anyone else. But by the fifth day, the silence started pressing down on me. I found myself checking the mailboxes downstairs just to see if hers was stuffed full, proof she'd been away. It wasn't. When I finally saw her again, it wasn't at the cafe. It was at the grocery store, near the produce aisle. She was turning an apple in her hand like she couldn't decide if it was worth the trouble. I froze, not sure if I should call out. She looked up before I could decide, eyes flicking to mine for the briefest moment. Then she smiled, polite, distant, and dropped the apple back into the bin. Without a word, she turned and walked down another aisle. I stood there too long, my basket hanging useless at my side. That night, I couldn't concentrate on anything. I drafted a dozen texts. Deleted all of them. "You okay?" Too casual. "Did I do something?" Too desperate. Finally I typed, "I keep looking for you." I didn't hit send. The next evening, I found myself back at the cafe. Her table was empty, but her absence filled the room. I sat anyway, ordered coffee I didn't drink. The barista gave me a look I couldn't read. 3 days later, I finally saw her again, outside, carrying a bag of groceries up the stairs to her apartment. I offered to help, but she shook her head quickly. "I've got it," she said, already halfway up. Her voice was kind, but her body angled away, as though keeping a door firmly shut. Still, I followed a step behind, uselessly clutching my keys. At her door, she hesitated with the lock. "I should have told you," she said quietly, without looking at me. My throat tightened. "Told me what?" She opened the door but didn't step inside. "I have a daughter. She's in college. Comes home sometimes. I don't want." She trailed off, shook her head. "I don't want to confuse anyone." There it was, something solid, something real I couldn't argue with. Still, the way she stood in the doorway, half turned toward me, made the air feel charged with everything left unsaid. I wanted to tell her I didn't care. That it didn't matter. That all I wanted was the quiet honesty we had at that corner table. But the words jammed in my throat. So I just nodded, stepped back. She closed the door gently, no slam, no anger. Just final enough. Back in my apartment, I stared at my phone. The draft was still there. "I keep looking for you." I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. And I still couldn't press send. It was late when I heard the knock. Soft, almost uncertain. For a moment I thought I imagined it. But when I opened the door, she was standing there, hair damp from the misty rain, thermos in her hand like always. "I didn't mean to wake you," she said. "You didn't." My voice came out rough, though I hadn't spoken to anyone all evening. She hesitated, shifting her weight. "I was making tea, and it felt strange, drinking it alone." I stepped aside without a word. She came in, set the thermos on the counter like she'd been here 100 times. My apartment looked smaller with her in it, the silence between us stretching and folding in on itself. I busied myself with mugs, but my hands shook slightly. She noticed, of course she did. "You don't have to," she said gently. "I want to." When the tea was poured, we sat at the tiny kitchen table. For a while, we just listened to the faint hum of the fridge. She held her mug with both hands, eyes lowered. Finally, she spoke. "I wasn't fair to you." I pulled back without explaining. I swallowed hard. "You don't owe me anything." "That's not true." Her gaze met mine then, steady. "You've been kinder to me than I expected. Than I deserve, maybe." I shook my head, words pushing against my chest. "Don't say that. You're not." I stopped myself, fingers tightening on my mug. Her lips curved in a tired smile. "You don't know everything." "Then tell me." The words came out before I could stop them. "Tell me why you keep closing the door when I trailed off, unable to finish. She set her mug down carefully, folded her hands in her lap. "Because I'm afraid," she admitted. "Afraid of what people will think. Afraid of how it looks. Afraid that you'll wake up one day and realize this was a mistake." The honesty in her voice hurt more than silence ever had. I leaned forward, elbows on the table. "I can't promise I won't mess things up. But I know I don't want to pretend this doesn't matter." Her eyes softened then, like something inside her finally gave way. She reached across the table, her hand hovering until I met it halfway. The contact was light, barely there, but it felt like the ground shifted beneath us. Neither of us said anything for a long moment. Just sat there, hand to hand, with the steam from the tea curling between us. Finally, she whispered, "You'll get hurt." "Maybe," I said, squeezing her fingers gently. "But at least it will be real." Her shoulders eased, a breath leaving her like she'd been holding it for years. She gave me the smallest smile, fragile but unguarded. "Okay," she said. And in that quiet kitchen, with nothing more than her hand in mine, it felt like enough. Time didn't change everything. Not all at once. She still had her routines, the thermos, the corner table, the way she folded receipts into tiny squares before slipping them into her bag. I still had mine, the unfinished notebooks, the black coffee I rarely drank. But slowly, the edges softened. We didn't announce anything. Not to neighbors, not to my brother, not even to ourselves. Instead, we slipped into something quieter. Tea on my kitchen counter after long days, small walks to the bench outside when the air felt heavy, shared groceries carried upstairs without asking. There were pauses still, moments where she'd pull back, remembering the years between us, or where I'd wonder if I could hold her life as it was, not as I imagined it. But the difference was, we didn't turn away anymore. One morning, months later, I walked into the cafe and saw her already at our table. She'd ordered tea for herself, and, without asking, a black coffee for me. It was sitting there at 8:47 a.m., steam rising, a little too bitter as always. I sat down, smiled at her, and she just shook her head at me. "You'll never finish it," she said. "Doesn't matter," I replied. "It's ours now." That made her laugh, not loudly, but enough that the barista looked over. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to explain or apologize. Later that evening, we sat on the bench again. Same one as before, only this time, she leaned against me instead of away. The city hummed around us, cars, voices, the soft drip of rain starting up again. I thought about the first time she'd sat here, thermos on her knee, distance between us like a wall neither of us could name. Now, the silence felt different. Not sharp, not heavy. Just shared. She tilted her head toward me. "Funny, isn't it? How something starts without you realizing. Just an unfinished cup of coffee. A question at the wrong time. Or the right one," I said. She didn't answer right away. Just reached for my hand, the same way she had in my kitchen, and held it like we were both finally steady. I don't know if it was love the way people write about it. But it was ours. Imperfect, patient, earned. And when she looked at me with that small, knowing smile, I realized there were some things you couldn't explain, you could only live them. The kind of moments that stay with you.